Alright guys, welcome to another video. It's been a while since I've done one of these. The last time I did a weather update video was all the way back in March. I should have done more, but I was too lazy. But now here we are. It is June 20th, 2023, Tuesday. And today we're going to be talking about the weather in the United States, the heat wave that's going on in Mexico and Texas right now. Tropical weather, and just like where we're going globally with weather. So I'll try to get this done, not as quickly as possible, but as the best I can. So we have Tropical Storm Brett. This formed yesterday. It's 40 miles an hour right now. It hasn't strengthened too much overnight because it has a little bit of structural issues. Not really with its low-level center, but the actual thunderstorms surrounding it aren't doing too well, and they're fizzling out in some areas. So part of the center is the least exposed, or it's not fully under deep convection. Invest 93, I was also dealing with a similar issue, but it should still develop within the next 48 hours. So Brett's track, as of right now, it was originally supposed to be forecast yesterday to be a hurricane as it goes into Leeward Islands. That has since dropped down to a tropical storm. That doesn't mean it's less dangerous. It just means the wind impact is less because the storm is farther south and the storm hasn't organized as much overnight as it could have. But if it does get its act together like now or quicker today, then it can easily get up to a hurricane if conditions are right for it. As it gets in the Caribbean, though, conditions should get worse for it, and it should not be able to strengthen. It should slowly weaken as it enters the Caribbean. As for the warning cone, this is where it is right now, as 11 a.m. This would have been 3 hours ago. It should be here now. By the time you're watching this video, it might be already here, but it should be around here now. So it's here, and it's supposed to move gradually, not very quickly, into the Leeward Island. No, these are the Leeward Islands, the Windward Islands, and then southward, and then westward into Eastern Caribbean, and then afterward, it's in the middle of the Eastern Caribbean, and it starts picking up speed at this point, much faster. So like between here, this isn't too much distance. It's a good amount of distance, but it's not like super fast. So this is moving at 21 miles an hour, which is fast, but it's not moving as fast as it is here. So the wind field is pretty small for now. That can grow depending on how much convection it gets over time. But it's still something to keep in mind. So if you live in a Windward Islands, it's still something that you should be looking out for. We can look at tropical tidbits now. This is a video by Mr. Levi Cowan. His Twitter account's right here, just in case you guys need to watch the video. So I'll link all the links here in the description for you guys. And right now we'll check current storms. So this is Brett right now. This is his location. These are some of the ensembles that it has. So this black line is the ensemble mean for the GEFS. This is, I believe, all the miles for GFS. But this right here, this is the current location, 1006. I have to check its current intensity. I think it's maybe a little bit weaker or stronger than this. But the consensus now is for the 60 run, which is at midnight today, my time, which is for it to go into the Leeward Islands and then move its way into the Western Caribbean and slowly start weakening. There's only one track that takes it north of the islands anymore. Before there were more because it was expected to be stronger, and the stronger storm would move slower. It was able to get picked up by the trough that was coming a lot easier. So a lot more tracks are just taking the storm into the Western Caribbean, into the Caribbean, and eventually into the Western Caribbean, but not recurving it northward. The intensity guidelines, almost everything saying a tropical storm for the next 5 days. Only one model, I believe, which is the 8th dwarf, says it's going to be Category 3. Yeah, 1006. So it's around the same intensity. Satellite imagery. It is starting to get a little bit of convection here. It seems to be. if I can actually get on satellite. Like, yeah, Invest 93's convection is pretty low right now. At the moment, it can get some of its back later. But for Brett, there's some convection starting to bubble back up near its center. It had more convection earlier, but that's starting to weaken. But this new convection could be a sign of increased strengthening. Alright, let's look at forecast models now. Let me just change to the North Atlantic. So we have a ridge of high pressure here. This is what's steering Brett westward as well as 93L. If this does develop, it will become Cindy. So as we move out into time slowly, next 2 days, Brett hasn't strengthened too much, but it's gained more rain, more convection, and it's approaching Leeward Islands. I wish I can zoom in closer. I can use the hurricane models for that. By around 60 hours, it's in the Windward Islands, affecting them, making direct impacts with its center. The actual wind will get here long before here. We'll get here about, I think, 6 to 12 hours before the actual main center of the storm comes through. And then it passes through the Windward Islands. It moves through, weakens down, and fizzles out on the GFS run. And as we start noticing, I believe this is Cindy. Cindy moves north. It doesn't get too strong and then fizzles out as well. It's another tropical wave behind it. But then in the eastern Pacific, we have tropical cyclones forming. East Pacific's been pretty much quiet since the beginning of its season. It hasn't had any activity. So this will be the start of its activity. And those storms will slowly move off. They're a bit too far out, but the signal for them is there within the next 7 days. These will be something to watch as they move out. Anything out this too far is not really useful, but the signals for these storms are there. So there's new models here. Heatwave. I believe this is a 2020 model, and then there's a new halves A and halves B models. So we use the halves A for Brett, and we'll check the halves B one. These are both hurricane models, so they're really good for forecasting hurricanes specifically. So right now, it's 2006. It's a bit stronger on the initialization of Brett. It takes a bit to get working, but as time goes on, Brett gets stronger as it gets towards Leeward Islands. This is getting to a strong tropical storm. On a GFS, this is weaker because the storm itself right now it's weaker. It hasn't organized too much. But here, the storm hasn't gotten too strong. I don't know what happened there, but that shouldn't happen that fast. But yeah, the storm isn't too, after it passes the Windward Islands, it's strongest around the Windward Islands, but then starts weakening. I can check the halves B as well. And for the halves B, it's even weaker when it enters the Windward Islands. But the rainfall will still be an issue. Heavy rain is always an issue with these types of storms. Even though the winds won't be super strong, they'll still be strong enough to cause damage. So it's still something that's worth watching, especially from the surf, the rain. It's still something you have to keep an eye on. As for Cindy, no, not Cindy. Cindy hasn't been named yet but for 93L, the Heatwave says it gets strong as it moves north. But if I look at the other models, they don't say the same thing. Oh wait, that's Brett. Hold on. It's the wrong storm. When Cindy is still, the Invest 93L is still there, but it's not super strong. There's still a good amount of rain with it, but it doesn't get super strong like the Heatwave was saying on the halves A model. And on the halves B model, it doesn't get super strong either. In fact, it weakens more on this model, disintegrates faster. So that's something that we're gonna have to keep an eye on. Oh, we have to use a global model for this. I have to use a global model. Go back. So I believe for this, wind shear is a bit of an issue. Yeah, there's some wind shear that's cutting into Brett. It's not it's directly there's some outflow from it, so this does help its outflow, but some of this wind shear is on top of Brett and it's hurting its intensification. This is pushing directly into wind shear from storms off the eastern United States. In the eastern Pacific, there's a lack of wind shear next to the coastline of Mexico and Central America on the western coast. So when storms do get developing there, they'll have plenty of space to breathe to get the energy that's emitted from the ocean up into the storm and then outward, as evidenced by this outflow channel in the Gulf of Mexico. I believe, in fact, if I look at Dapia, I'm not sure. Globally, oh, you look at the North Atlantic. Yeah, there we are. There's Brett, this 93L. So the ocean right here is extremely warm this time of year. This is as warm as it should be in September in some of these areas, especially like farther north and down south. Here is not as warm as it would be in September, but it's still pretty warm. In the western Atlantic, the 30 degrees Celsius area, which is about 86 degrees Fahrenheit, is pretty large in the Gulf of Mexico, except for this area off near the Florida Panhandle. It's warm around the Bahamas, the Western Caribbean. Through most of the Caribbean, it's pretty warm, decent enough for tropical cyclones. So if the wind shear wasn't here, these storms could do a lot more, as long as they had the right structure. And then the Gulf Stream is pretty warm as well. The shelf waters close to the Carolinas and Georgia have not warmed up yet, simply because it's still June. This takes more time to warm up, but by at least later in July, this should be at least 26 degrees Celsius, which is about 80 degrees Fahrenheit. So, but globally, Atlantic's looking good on its warmth. The Eastern Pacific is pretty hot. Here, it's pretty hot. These waters are around 32 degrees Celsius, which is around 90 degrees. So when these storms get together, when these storms get it together over here in the model, if they do indeed form, they'll have plenty of energy to work with. The only issue will be wind shear and dry air getting into them. As you can see, our El Nino is coming on. This just came on. This is just designated by the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. This just got designated, but so it just came on rapidly, so the effects are not there yet. So the wind shear isn't there yet. The atmosphere is starting to get to an El Nino phase, but it's not there completely yet. You can see the hot water in the Atlantic, so this is really going to provide a lot of energy for the Atlantic hurricanes that do form. It's also going to create a rising air cell here that's going to compete with the El Nino. So El Nino is not super strong yet, but when these two later in the year get very strong, it's going to be a question of which one is stronger. Because North Atlantic is still very warm, and even warms up even more by the time we get to August, September, October, it could negate some of the effects from El Nino. Generally, a lot of world seas are hot right now. There's still a lot of warm water in the Western Pacific, so that's not allowing El Nino to come on super quickly, as there's still a lot of rising air coming off Oceania and the Maritime continent over this way. So, from a tropical standpoint, this cold water is going to hurt the Eastern Pacific hurricane season. The warm water is going to help the Atlantic hurricane season, but the El Nino should put a little bit of a tamer on it. But it really depends how fast the atmosphere gets together. If the El Nino conditions don't get here fast enough, this could still be a very busy season. Believe me, on NOAA Coral Reef Watch, if I look at anomalies, the anomaly map is still, this water is about 2 to 3 to 4 degrees Celsius warmer than it should be, which is very warm. Up near, I think, the UK, it's near like 5 degrees Celsius in some areas. El Nino just came on. A lot of water in the Western Pacific, as I talked about. And from alert days, there's a lot of alert dates for coral bleaching and stuff like that. So there are a good amount of marine heat waves around the world at the moment. So fishing in some areas like in the western Not in the West Pacific. A little bit in the West Pacific, but in like the Eastern Pacific along the coastline, it's gonna be harder to get fish and other things like that since the water is so warm. That aquatic life are gonna struggle pretty hard in these areas. So that's the tropics out the way for now. So let's go over to the Storm Prediction Center in the United States. So for now, effective outlooks. For today, we have slight risk in North Dakota, the high plains, and along the Gulf Coast. The ones along the Gulf Coast, this is more induced by heating of the atmosphere. This is induced by a cold front. So severe weather down here is more from thunderstorms from the intense heat, because there's a big heat dome in Mexico and Texas that's keeping this area extremely warm. So that extreme heat is going to allow thunderstorms to grow very tall and could be severe in the right conditions. So there's the summary. Isolated scattered thunderstorms, severe thunderstorms appear possible in northern plains in East Texas and Southeast. Damaging winds and large hail should be the main threat. There's not really a strong chance of tornadoes, I don't believe. Yeah, it's a 2% chance. There's not really strong winds here in these areas. The main issue is just wind from obviously there's some wind here in the area, but it's not enough to get stuff rotating. So the strong storms will be able to pull wind from the upper atmosphere down. That's going to cause some wind gusts on the ground. So just be careful of that, and some hail as well. Those are things you guys should be watching out for today. Tomorrow there's another slight risk in the in the western plains. I believe the cold front's moving southward. Yeah, there's an upper trough moving into the area. So, and there will be a stationary front. So the front that was here, that was weak, will move down farther south, but then stall and can't move anymore. So that will increase the amount of thunderstorms that you guys have in this area. Now, front range in parts of the Central Plains. Ongoing storm clusters move morning across the Central Plains. Some camp solutions take an ongoing storm cluster intensify through the day. Okay, so you guys might get a mesoscale convective complex that comes through this area. So you get one thunderstorm that forms, and then you get more that form after as the original thunderstorm's outflow begins to push out. So you can get one of those that moves across this area and can last for hours on end. Those types of weather systems, if they get over warm water, can also turn into tropical cyclones, if you guys didn't know. For this marginal risk in Florida, this is mainly from daytime heating. There isn't really. I believe there's a cold front there. Yeah, there's an upper level low here, but there's no real cold area down here. It's just more daytime heating storms. And for day 3, it's more of the same. This weekend's down here, and there's more general thunderstorms in this area. Now, I believe rainfall is going to be pretty high. I need to find that graphic because I don't know where it is. I believe it should be pretty high. I can always check the weather models anyway. I can go to the United States and check the weather models for rainfall. Preset accumulated. Let's go back. Yeah, so we'll go out to use the GFS. We'll use 2 models here. We'll use GFS 0, and we'll maybe use another model. Go out to 168 hours, 7 days. So in the southeast, you're getting about 2 inches of rain on average. Some areas you might get closer to. In some of these areas, in the isolated areas, you might get closer to 7 or 4 or 5. So if that falls in a fast enough time, that can lead to flooding issues. But just because this is 2 inches overall, if you just get one thunderstorm that just sits around, or you get a group of thunderstorms that keep moving over the same area, this might not be correct. Because if you get multiple thunderstorms, you can easily get many many multitudes higher rainfall totals than you have here. Also check the euro as well. The euro is showing, let's go to 168 if possible. Euro is showing about 2 inches of rain. I'll use the 60 run. Yeah, so there's still a good amount of rain in this area, so if you guys are wondering about the rainfall, just be aware of it. If you do get a flash flood warning or flood watch, just make sure to stay away from rivers or streams or urban areas that you know are going to flood pretty often. And just make sure that you're watching the weather forecast, because if you do get thunderstorms that keep moving over your same area over and over again, they might not be severe, but the rain is definitely severe enough to cause a lot of damage, so you guys should be wary of that. Also, we'll check temperatures as well. Not anomalies, but this is an easy way to tell where the heat ridge is. In Mexico and New Mexico and Texas. I can actually use a North America map because I think this help more. Yeah, a lot of Mexico and Texas is very hot right now. If I look at actual temperatures, this is 100. This is in the hundreds, 90s, 80s in a lot of the country. I think further south is normal. 80s is normal, but it's still hot, and it gets stronger throughout the day. 111 in Western Texas, 102 in Texas, and in Eastern Texas. At night, it doesn't cool off too much. Drops down to 80s, which if you're sleeping at night and you don't have air conditioning, this can be a very big issue for you. As you wake up, you wake up and the day goes on, it gets hotter, drops back down. Like there's no real relief from it. You're not getting, like in some areas you're getting rain. I think up here you're getting rain. And this is rain, definitely. But you're not getting too much of it. You need a rainstorm to cool you off in this type of situation. And in some areas you're not going to be able to get it because the ridge is right on top of you, and you can't get rain when you're underneath a ridge because you can't get any air to rise up. I'll look at the GFS as well. GFS is painting a similar story. The heat does expand in the Louisiana. I think later on starts to expand northward as well. Yeah, it starts to expand into more the south and northward into the Midwest. This thunderstorm complex will definitely cool you off, but this cool air is indicative of like very heavy rain, so I might be watching out for that. It's gonna be hot in Arizona in the desert. It's gonna be pretty warm in Canada. So if you enjoy warm weather, it's gonna be good up there. And then there's some heat in the southeast United States. Some heat there too. I believe the rain is what's keeping it cool here. The rain's what's keeping it cool here while it's warm in Canada. So this heat in Canada should start going away towards the end of the month. The high heat, it will still be warm up here. And then yeah, as we go later on, 204 hours, starting to get out of the predictable range, but signals for hotter weather as time goes on. Also look at the dew point. I don't think I can look at the dew point here. I have to look at it from this map. Where's the dew point? Dew point, there we go. The dew point is pretty high in the eastern United States. It's not too high in western Texas, so this heat is bearable. But right around the Rio Grande and eastward, the dew points are pretty high, so this is not going to make the heat that you're experiencing feel any better. Oh, that was pretty far out. Hold on. Yeah, so the high dew points that you're getting in Texas, this is not going to make the heat feel any better, especially with this stuff like 79, 77 dew points. That's not going to make you feel any better in the heat. So guys, just make sure that you're watching that, because it doesn't look great. And as time goes on, just out the forecasting window, the humidity starts to expand more, and it encompasses more of the eastern United States as time goes on. I can also look at weekly to see how pattern will be. Yeah, so there's supposed to be more ridging for this week in Quebec. So that's going to keep the heat there. Also, this giant ridge this ridge over Mexico and Texas, also going to keep it very hot down there. This cutoff low is what's bringing the rain to the southeast. But I think as next week goes on, there's another one. But it will start warming up down here as its influence is not as strong as it moves farther north. But in general, as the weeks go by with this forecast, there's a general weakness in this area for troughing. So there's going to be more storms in this area by the looks of it using the CFS model. And then that starts filling in later, but it's still weaker. And then by August, we start seeing a ridge in the western United States, northwest, and southwest Canada, and one over Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. I can look at the Climate Prediction Center again. Yeah, so for the next 6 to 10 days, if you live in Texas, down here, it's going to be really warm. It's going to stay above average. If you live in California and on some parts of the East Coast, it's going to be a little bit cooler than average. Not cold, but it's not going to be as hot as it should be. And then in the northern, a little bit in the northern tier, it's going to be warmer than it should be. Oh yeah, this is the way to get the picture. Okay. Precipitation wise, there should be more precipitation on the eastern part of the country and in the western part of the country. Above average there doesn't mean it's going to be like a lot of rain. It just means a lot more rain than what you're used to. You're not used to getting too much rain in the western this time of the year. And if you live in the desert southwest, the Four Corners region, and in Texas, you're not going to be getting too much rain over the next 6 to 10 days. Even in 8 to 14 days, it doesn't change too much. It stays hot. It stays hot and stays dry, so this heat will keep building until the pattern changes. For the next 3 to 4 weeks, it's supposed to stay warm in the south, in the northwest, and in parts of the northeast. Everywhere else, equal chance of being cold or warm. Precipitation-wise, Texas should be getting more rain. Well, not more rain. It should return to average precipitation. So if you don't get a lot of rain, then you won't get any more than you already have. Unless it's like a little bit. In Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming, you'll get more rain. And in the southeast United States, you'll also get more rain. So the drought monitor is pretty strong. In the Great Plains, it's supposed to improve. Some areas are supposed to get removed over the summer. Supposed to get removed. But over the Midwest and the Northeast, rapid drought onset is supposed to, well, not rapid, but drought is supposed to develop as there hasn't been too much rain in these areas. And I'll use tropics. For the tropics, it's one thing I'll talk about before we talk about the globe. I think things are going. We have June 28th. We have more rain in the Equatorial Pacific. You're going to see this a lot more since we have El Nino going on. A chance of a tropical development in the Western Pacific. Indian monsoon seems to be a little bit better on this part. And it seems to be hotter as well, so that might not be too good. The hotter part. The rain's always beneficial, as long as you don't get too much of it. In some United States, Florida, and in Mexico, it's supposed to be hotter than the normal probability. Tropical cyclone development is expected in the Eastern Pacific as time goes on, and it's supposed to be some in the MDR, and there's still more rain in the MDR later. But it's still supposed to be hot in Mexico as we go into July. So overall, where I think we're going, at least globally, if I can pick up the CANSIPS model. I'll use the CANSIPS model. This is a Canadian model. It might not be the best model, but I'll use this model for the globe, and I'll probably use the NWME for this UK model. I'll go over precip and other stuff. So I'll only go over for the next about 2 months. Well, yeah, we'll go over this month, and then we'll go over to about August, and then we'll stop there. So for the next 3-month average, for like June, doesn't look like Eastern India's supposed to get too much rain compared to what it usually is. It's supposed to get less rain. In general, the maritime continent, like the Indian Ocean, is getting less rain. So this air is sinking over this area. Mexico's not supposed to be getting too much rain. This is an issue for your heat wave. And there's supposed to be more rain in Japan in the Philippine Sea. This could be from tropical cyclones, or this could be from stalling fronts. It's supposed to be more rain in the Mediterranean and in West Africa. The West African monsoon is pretty active right now, and some more rain in the Caribbean. As we go into July, there should be more rain in India than the Indian subcontinent. Even less rain near Indonesia, just because the water here is starting to get cold. Well, not get cold, but it's starting to cool down from upwelling from the intense trade winds over there. It's supposed to be more rain in the Pacific Islands, even in the Solomon Islands, New Guinea. Australia is supposed to be slightly drier. Still more rain in the Philippine Sea, but not too much on the other side. China looks about average. Siberia as well. Eastern United States looks to be wetter, and West African monsoon is still there. So this could be more tracks coming off. Mexico starts to get rain in July. Central America as well. So this is most likely the Eastern Pacific hurricane season starting to actually get active again. And as we look into August, a lot more rain in the Gulf of Mexico and eastern coast of the United States. The West African monsoon and the tropical storms and hurricanes. Well, this isn't like 100% indicator where they're gonna go, but this is like, okay, so this is where the precipitation will be. So this is most likely where you might be tracking. So this could be good. This could be good for recurves, or it could be really bad if you get a storm that comes all the way here and then moves into either the Gulf, swings up the East Coast, or hits one of the islands. Mexico's still supposed to be wet. Eastern Pacific is still supposed to have a lot of rain here. So this is still a sign of El Nino. India's still wet. More of the South China Sea is wet. South China Sea is wet. Japan starts to dry out. So this might be an issue for water in Taiwan and southern China and Japan. This could also mean like the Philippines, like there's a high pressure ridge here, and that drives typhoons into them. It's also a possibility. And over Africa, they're still pretty wet. Europe, it's a mixed bag. We'll look at temperatures as well. We'll look at sea temperatures first. Sea temperatures, El Nino gets stronger. Atlantic is still very warm. It gets even warmer. As I was saying, this water off Indonesia starts cooling down. The water next to Africa is still pretty warm. And the water next to Europe is still pretty warm as well. So if you do get a storm here, it could still get pretty strong, running extra energy, but this will also keep you warmer. If we were to look at the two temperature meter thing, yeah. So this will still keep you warmer since the ocean near you is also hotter. So overall, looks to be pretty hot in Canada still. This is not good for a wildfire issue. But generally warmer everywhere. A lot more rain. More rain's coming for Central America and India. El Nino is starting to get into full gear. It's not there yet. It really depends on how strong the trade winds are here. If there's more strong trade winds, this is really gonna put a damper on the El Nino, and it's gonna stop it. So the more El Nino gets stopped, the more active this Atlantic hurricane season is going to be. It really just depends on how strong this gets and what time do the effects of El Nino actually kick in. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. There's other stuff I have here too. As well, want to watch my other stuff, you guys can. It would be really appreciated, as I want to get back in the algorithm. But yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow with another video. Bye guys.